Hey there, and welcome back to this bite-sized episode of the Mission Makers podcast. We're going to dive back into some of our favourite episodes of Season 2 and pull out some of the key lessons from our amazing guests that will hopefully inspire and empower your missions wherever you are in the world. So for this week's bite-sized episode, we're joined by Sallyann Della, who is a soft skills expert building an amazing tech company in Dubai. Her mission is centered around fostering leaders through the soft skills that make us human, and in an increasingly automated world where the pace of work is changing so rapidly, our skills in things like communication, collaboration, creativity and more need to be exceptional. And as you listen to today's show, you'll understand why 80% of C-suite leaders value those skills more than the hard skills that we develop. Sallyann has had a really interesting journey, and we discuss many things on today's show, from breaking out of the expectations set by her family to her experiences as a female founder in tech and her advice for managing personal and professional boundaries. Now, I know that a topic that you're very, very passionate about is education, and there are a lot of misconceptions, obviously, about private versus public education. At this moment in time, we're speaking and we're undergoing probably the biggest paradigm shift in education that our lifetime has ever seen. What is the reality in your eyes?
So with all the negativity with COVID, I would actually say it has been, on the other extreme, so that, there's always a double-ended sword of everything. It has been the most powerful catalyst for change in education. So the things that those of us in education have been talking about for generations. So, whether it is 30, 40 years, now is coming to pass in a matter of months in terms of the open-mindedness of educators, the open-mindedness of government, the open-mindedness of funders, even parents, right? To be able to go, let's try this, let's try something different. And the reason why it has not worked, whether it's public or private, I think public and private has been fundamentally the same, because the biggest stakeholders, which are parents, teachers, as long, there's been real no incentive to shift or change anything. And educators are not going to change the system if they continue making money off of it the way it is. I mean, that's a reality. So I think what has happened now in both public and private is COVID kind of threw everybody into the same boat. Whether you're public and private, you're now in a home environment, you're now not in that, not in a piece of real estate that somehow makes it look different or sound different. It's right there in front of you, what's happening for parents and teachers with your child. And all the stakeholders are involved on a daily basis, which they're not used to, because parents would just drop their kids off. So they have no, even though they're a stakeholder, they weren't really actively involved. Now everyone is actively involved and everyone can see what the problem is. And it's opened up the door to say, okay, well, what if, right? And that what if is what kind of now allows so many players, whether it's startups, whether it is, those with innovative ideas, to go, let's see what that what if can look like in terms of education. And there's always been this disconnect with education and the workforce, and it's been getting wider and wider. And the reason it's getting wider and wider, Farah, is because traditionally our parents' generation, they would graduate and the value of their degree was a 30-year career or a 50-year career. Today, the value of a degree, you're lucky if it's even worth anything by the time you graduate. That's how fast areas are shifting. I think the World Economic Forum recently said that by 2022, 133 million new emerging jobs will happen. And when I say that, people go, well, what do you mean? And I always say to them, think about the job contact tracer. So a year ago, none of us actually even knew what that even was. In April of 2020, there was 100,000 job vacancies for that job alone in the US, and it pays $34 an hour. That job didn't exist. There's no degree for it. It's all based on, human skills. So I think it's real now for governments, parents, everyone going, wait a minute. I mean, the purpose of education is to, if the measure of success of education is, I put a child out there into the world who can get a great job, thrive, be a successful human being, have all the opportunity in the world. Well, if that's the measure, we have pretty much done terrible at it for the last several years. And now is that opportunity in terms of changing it, both public and private. So timing is now, Farah.
It 100% is. No, it's very true. And that's where I think the education system is flawed, because it's so much about, age of 3, you need to get into the school and take a test to get in there. And if you don't, your whole life is determined as to where you'll end up, where you could go, what your potential somewhat is, according to who, society. And it's not correct, because exactly, you have to go through this huge internal reflection and journey to gain back that confidence, to allow yourself to thrive, and feel okay to know that you will never know everything. It's not humanly possible, and that's absolutely okay. So talking about this kind of weight of expectation, I know that you spent many years, almost a decade, working in law, and you felt like you were climbing a mountain that you didn't really want to be on, but you kind of did it to appease your family. So what was the kind of turning points for you to transcend that need to fulfill your family's expectations of you? And do you reflect back on that time now as the catalyst that actually led you to answer your true calling in life?
At the time, when I stepped away, at 30, 31, it was the most courageous thing I had ever done, because I was successful at it in other people's eyes. And it's very difficult when other people already, particularly those who love you the most, your family members, your friends, and they already have you pegged in a certain corner on a shelf, looking a certain way, and you kind of say, wait a minute, no, that's not my spot. I actually want to be in another position. That impacts everybody around you. So the people around you, they were not encouraging at all about me giving up law, about me trying to, as far as they were concerned, they were like, you're going from a lawyer to be a teacher? That was just such a disgrace. It was a very difficult thing, but I just knew deep inside, you know, what I was doing was not aligned to why I'm here. And I think I feel so fortunate that I asked and I was able to answer that question, why are you here? Right? Because if I look at it in the bigness of it, we're just passing through and we're here. And I think when we are in flow with why we're here, it feels different. And I know that now. It feels very, very different.
It really, really does. It just, you flow through effortlessly, no matter what obstacles come. You just, you're like water. It's very fluid. You just move with the ocean. Now, a topic that you're incredibly passionate about, is human skills, and soft skills in particular. You've said in the past that if you think of a human in terms of a house, then the hard skills would be the walls, but the space in between the walls is where you find the human skills. I love that analogy. So, talk to me more about the ideas, behind this.
Sure. So let's think about any, for anyone, your audience, or even yourself, any incredible doctor that or any incredible human that you know. And if I were to ask you, why do you think that they stand out? You're not going to tell me because they have a Stanford degree, or they have an Oxford degree, or something relating to some hard. You will tell me most of the times, it's the way they make me feel when I'm around them, or it's the way that they put creatively ideas together. Like, I don't know where they come up with that. It's always the human side of us that makes us exceptional in our unique combinations. It's the quirkiness, that's the weirdest person I ever met, but I love it. Right. So it's always those things. And when you think about any job role today, and the majority of job roles are people facing, right? Where we interact with humans, that's where we spend most of our time. We spend most of our time, there's studies, Stanford, Harvard, and Carnegie Mellon has a study out, and even Google through Project Oxygen, 80 to 85% of top performers at Google are not there because of their tech skills. They're there because of their human skills, right? Things like coaching, things like empathy, things like, listening. The same in terms of the study. So most jobs and most roles out there, 85% of the success is human skills. The reason why we have not really focused on them is that we take it for granted that we all have them. And, if I were to say to you, how many not so great communicators do you know? We know a lot of them, right? Or how many people you know that are not creative? We know a lot of people who are not creative, right? We just take it for granted. That's one. And number two, those who are, or if we're teaching those things, we don't know how to measure them. So how do I measure that, Farah is very results oriented. It's really good with self-direction. Or how do I measure, Farah has a unique combination of creative thinking and critical thinking. So there's never really been a measure, which is, where, I focus my time in terms of kind of developing that patent on that measure. So the human skills is the driver. And I think as we go more into a world where we don't know, there's a Dell Technologies study that says 85% of the jobs of 2030, we don't know what they are. I mean, and you just have to look at the emerging jobs, right? The 133 million over the next 2 years. We don't know what the hard skills are. So do I go learn Python, or do I go learn if I'm in tech, or do I go learn to know those things? But I pretty much know as a human coming to the table, I might need to communicate, collaborate, critical thinking. I need some emotional IQ. So those are the given. That's the thread. That's the given. So let's focus on those areas. And that's why I focus on those areas, Farah.
It's amazing what you've designed with Gleek. I'm in awe of how you've kind of created this incredible system through AI to actually measure these skills. Why do you think that companies cut budgets towards developing these skills? Is it because they can't? There hasn't been that measurement, very direct measurement in place. But when in fact these are the ones that they struggle the most with in terms of their employees and developing this culture amongst their teams.
So I think measure is one facet of it. The second part of it is, if you look out there, there are not a lot of people teaching it really well. So it's not like hard skills learning, in terms of the human skills where you go in and it's memory work. So, think about it, right? If I'm going to learn digital marketing, I go in, I can take a weekend course or a course on Udemy. I get some right or wrong answers, and it's human skills. It's the application. So there are three things required for human skills to actually learn it and measure it. And it is, you have to come to it often. The degree of difficulty of application changes, and you must have a feedback loop. It requires way greater effort. So I think for corporates, the lack of measure means they can't tie it to an item in their balance sheet or their, in terms of their statement, right? So number one, there's that aspect. I can't measure it. Like, do you have an A in critical thinking or creativity? Like, how do I measure that in terms of your KPIs? And then number two, well, why is it that you just can't go to a weekend leadership in a weekend course in leadership and become a leader? And it doesn't work that way either, right? So there is this idea of how do you make it habit and practice? It requires greater investment. So I think the combination of the both, it's a harder nut to crack. And certainly it's not low hanging fruit. And I think that's why corporates have a hard time with it.
Very interesting. So, do you think that COVID has actually had a negative effect on people's soft skills, or do you think, as we alluded to earlier, it's one of the most profound times to change things and particularly test our humanity and focus on reskilling ourselves and really realizing deep within ourselves if what we've, dedicated our life or our time to has really been fulfilling us?
So I think it's the best time for human skills. This particular, I can tell you prior to COVID, it's been a couple of years I've been working on this, and people have been wondering, I'm sure when I see them, I get all excited talking about it. They were like, what has she been smoking? Right? Because literally, nobody was very excited until COVID. And then COVID happened, and then all of a sudden, the biggest companies in the world, I feel so honored and humbled are having conversations with me going, that's what you've been up to. So I think if anything, COVID kind of leveled the playing field and brought us back to the really kind of simple, as I said to you, it's no longer your title and you're in a big office and you're all the ornaments of what success. Everybody is on a Zoom call in their homes, needing to have human connections and connect with each other. And it really kind of brought some humility back and us to really kind of self-examine and go, wait a minute, this has been missing all along. So it's the best time now. And if you look globally, there's a huge movement happening in this, right? So you see for the first time schools really looking at, we have like Western Governors University, that's the first competency-based type of university. We have many high schools, looking at social and emotional learning as a core part of curriculum. We have so many startups being funded in the area of, just this whole area of human skills, soft skills, social and emotional learning. So I think COVID has been great for bringing us back to this, which is a really crucial thing when it comes to the labor market, right? Because this is what the labor market, if you look at what they've been saying, they've been missing and where they're spending their training dollars. If you look at the LinkedIn training reports, it's all on the human skills that most of the spend is happening because students are not coming out with those skills, well honed and well sharpened.
Particularly when it's you don't have this opportunity to develop it face to face. It's very hard in a digitalized context to develop that collaboration and all those types of things. The last question I want to ask you around this sort of topic is that compassion is very important in leadership, and yet many leaders struggle with actually developing this, and sometimes their workplaces become places of cyberbullying, and they don't have very positive environments. What do you think is one of the first things a leader should do to cultivate a culture of compassion?
Wow. So one as a leader, you're not always, you have to also be forgiving on yourself that you're not always going to be the most compassionate leader. I think, and I think if you start from that place of everyone is entitled to have a bad day, even including you, and you create a workplace that is vulnerable enough to allow people to raise their hands and be able to say that, um, uh, that's a start in terms of a compassionate. So often I think, not being able to just recognize that we're humans and we're going to walk in with all kinds, each of us have all kinds of baggage and all kinds of emotions. And, I have days where I actually say to my team, I'm really having a bad day. It's not a great day to talk to me, and they will, they send me chocolates or they send me, like, just virtual stuff, and they're like, okay, we're not talking to her today, like it's not happening today. But I need to be able to do that with my team. I have a fairly young team because then I give them permission themselves to also do that. And I think part of that compassionate leader is giving us space to just be, right? To not leave any parts of ourselves at the door. And if you allow people to walk in with their full selves, it's going to be messy. It's not going to be perfect. People are going to have bad days, and that's the beauty of being human, and be very kind of forgiving with each other. So always start from a place. One of the things I often tell them is start from a place. If someone is upsetting you and if something doesn't feel right, ask a question from a place of curiosity versus blame. So instead of going, that was really terrible, I think, da da da, and you start kind of coming down on someone from a place of curiosity. I wonder what you were thinking when you did, whatever. And curiosity then allows that person to exhale and not be defensive. And that's a great act of compassion. So coming from a place of curiosity, I think also coming from a place of vulnerability and showing that, you need compassion also. So I can tell you as a leader, I have recently said to my team, why is it that nobody ever asked me if I'm having a good day? And they were kind of taken back by that. And I said, because, it shouldn't be that I have to come to stand up every single day, making sure everyone is okay. I said, maybe I would love if someone checks in on me during the day and go, how are you doing? Are you having a great day? Is everything okay? So I think also being vulnerable as a leader, and also showing what you need and asking for what you need, even if it's from a place, a vulnerable place, I think it's very important and an act of, for them, of compassion. And the third part is, as I said to you, leaving them the room to be able to just be who they are, right? And voice up and speak up when you need space and room, and not leave parts of themselves at the door. So that would be the three things I would say to you, Farah, in terms of compassion as a leader.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That's so profound. And yeah, it's amazing how so many people just don't ask, how are you? And you ask them that question back. I think it should just, you should always ask that question back. You're having, it's a two-way relationship, and both people have invested a lot of time and energy to be in that space, and it has
Yeah.
to be held with the same level of care and respect. And also something that you said there that we were having a chat about earlier about, taking the space away. And sometimes some of the hardest things as a founder of a startup is like, you're developing this culture, this DNA in your organization that reflects you. And there's so much when you're a founder that you have to be in so many different areas, so many different hats. And it's what you sort of said to me earlier about just letting go and like letting your team take over that, and kind of just detaching yourself from the process, but yet your spirit is still embodied through how they communicate, how they deliver the customer experience, whatever it is. So very, very interesting.
Yeah.
I love this quote of yours as well that you said about your quality of yeses increases by all the things you say no to, and you actually have a specific not to do list, which I absolutely love. By the way, most of us have to do lists. Whoever thought let's have a not to do list, and
Yes.
that also that also means being quite guarded about who enters your space, which is also very important.
Yeah.
So why do you think people struggle to say no, and what do you think that says about the way humans are programmed?
When it comes from this space, Farah, you cannot give what you do not have within you. And if you show up at 50% because you're overworked, it doesn't matter if you spend 10 hours or 20 hours doing something, all you can give is that 50%. And if you really want to autograph your presence, your work, like a Picasso painting, and that's what I earnestly want to do. I think my customers deserve that. I think my employees deserve that. I think anybody who turns their time and attention, even yourself today, I owe it to you to show up at my 200% that can be autographed. It means I have to make sure that I do whatever it takes that allows me to do that. And that involves saying no to things that you might genuinely say yes to appease, to look good, to be accepted, to the list goes on. Whether it's family, workplace, there's a 99 list of people and the higher you get up in the ladder, the more the requests will be, right? So that's one. Number two, for me also, it's guarding my personal space. So, I do believe I am that average of the 5 people I spend the most time with. And I have to be really guarded about, even though you're running a company, sometimes you don't want to be around the energy of certain people, even in your own organization, right? Because remember, human beings they might just be having a bad day or a bad week. And you have to pick up on that. And because I'm a very open energy, I absorb. I have not learned that gift yet of blocking my energy. So many people have told me that. So I can come out of talking to someone and feel like a steamroller just rolled over me because I've just absorbed. If they had negativity on them, if there was, some people are great and, they shield, but I think that's the double-edged sword of having the gift of connecting with people, is because you're so open. I can connect in a minute at the deepest level with someone, but it's because of that openness. It's the same way if that person had negative energy, I absorb that immediately.
Thank you guys for listening. Season 3 will be back with a bang in the autumn. Until then, we've got plenty of impactful bonus and bite-sized episodes coming your way. So don't forget to subscribe and share the show with your friends, because it truly means the world to us. And if you're interested in some super cool rewards like virtual DJ lessons with me, signed books from our guests, and exclusive merchandise, then head over to www.patreon.com/missionmakers to check out how you can start supporting the show for less than what it costs you to fill up your car. So till then, Mission Makers, be safe, be healthy, and be laser focused.